What's up? Been a long time. Long winter. Some of you still been out there fishing. I've been building this back deck, trying to get this thing ready for springtime. So I haven't been on for a little bit, but I wanted, since it's getting closer, I wanted to go through my favorite springtime baits and see if you guys have any differences in opinion or you know, whatnot. But just remember, these are my favorites. You know, like, my favorites might not be somebody else's favorites, but it's definitely something that's going to help you guys figure out what they at least start using in the springtime. These are like early spring baits, once the water, you know, starts warming up a little bit and the fish start thinking about spawning, moving along the channel swings and whatnot. So without further ado, we'll get into our favorite baits of the springtime. So let me start with number one. Number one, my favorite is going to be, if I can get it out of this carpet, Lipless trap. Old rattle trap. Y'all see that? Oh yeah, nice pearly orange, yellow belly, or red sides, orange belly. Oh yeah, that's the goods right there. That's a half-ounce red-eye shad. It's got rattles in it. It's probably one of my go-tos, and the times that I use this bait are going to be anytime that there's grass. You know, a lot of the time in the Northeast in the spring, the grass is still, you know, left over from the year before. It's not dead yet, but it's also not new. So it's just like, you know, you got a little bit of leftover vegetation from the year before. A lot of it's brown, but you know, that'll hold heat when that sun starts picking up and really warming things up a little bit. So I tend to use a rattle trap anytime I'm in the grass. Normally I'll, you know, target, I don't know, 0 foot to 6 foot, something like that with a trap. You can even go as deep as 8 foot. Some of you might have seen the video last fall where during the end of the year that I got onto a little bit of a trap bite. I normally throw this on 15-pound fluorocarbon. Some people throw it on braid. I don't like to throw it on braid because the front hook tends to, when the line is here and you drop that bait down and then go to rip it back up, that line loop catches that front hook and it's a pain in the ass. You can use braid on it, you know, if you can figure out the proper technique to where you're not going to catch that line every couple casts. That'll be good. So one thing I do with the trap, now this one has rattles. I will use one that doesn't have rattles if I feel like the lake that I'm fishing is pressured, or you know, there's a lot of boats, a lot of activity going on. Then I'll switch to something that's a little more subtle without rattles. Normally I just pick one out of the box. If it has rattles, cool. If not, whatever. But if it is pressured, I will look for one that doesn't have rattles. Now the one thing that I do is I change the hooks out. You can see these aren't stock hooks. Let's get them from swinging. These are Gamakatsu EWGs. I don't know what size they are, but whatever size was on the trap is the size that I replaced them with. What you can do is this bait should run nose down. You can see the nose gets worn down on them from banging in rocks and grass and whatever else. One thing you can do that will help out keep that bait coming down that way is to put a one size bigger hook on the front. That'll weigh it down just a little bit. Some people use suspend dots and put one on the nose, but you don't need all that. Just use a bigger size hook on the front. Now with the O-rings, I only use one O-ring on here. A problem that you could have with traps is losing fish. Most of the time when those fish have this trap, it's down their throat. What you can do is, if you're having problems losing fish, add a second O-ring to the first O-ring, so you'll have 2 on the back and 2 on the front. What that does is you won't have much leverage. See, this here will stop turning here. Now if you have a second O-ring on there, that's going to completely swing around free, so you won't have that issue. So the red is the color that I'm going to go to in muddy conditions. Like I said, the target for a red-eye shad or a lipless crankbait of any kind is definitely grass. You're gonna catch more fish in grass this way. And what I normally do is I'll cast it out and then, you know, count it down, let it hit the bottom, and then start slowly retrieving it. And as it gets hung in that grass, you want to rip it free and then let it fall. Most of the time when you rip that free, as soon as it comes free, that's when they're going to get it, okay? But killer bait in the early springtime, those are a few modifications that I make. And red I'm going to go to in super stained muddy water. The other one I'm going to throw in clear water or clearer water, semi-stained to clear. I'm going to throw a gold with a blue back. Looks just like that. These hooks haven't been changed on this. But this is also a 1/2 ounce, also with rattles. So clear water, you want to throw something a little bit that's more natural. And in muddy water, you want to throw something that's extremely visible. So number 1, rattle trap. Number 2, go to the old, you guys know how much I like to throw a spinnerbait. Both of them have willow leaves. A lot of people ask me if I throw any other blade combinations, and I really don't. I mean, if I lived somewhere else where there was really super stained water, or if I needed to keep the bait higher or lower, I can usually make an adjustment to the spinnerbait itself without changing the blades. So I tend to like the willow leaf blade combination. It doesn't matter if they're gold, silver, whatever. I don't think it makes any bit of difference. But the spinnerbait, the one I throw the most is a 1/2 ounce. It's called a baby burner or a burner, I believe, by Strike King. Now these red things, you know, I don't like a whole lot of red on my spinnerbait, so I usually cut those off and then just leave it as 3 of those balls and keep that red off of there. Might just be something in my head, but I do not like red little highlights whatsoever. If it's a completely red bait, that's fine. But when it has little highlights on a natural looking bait, I don't like it too much. Don't ask me why, just something I'm weird about. So the modifications that I make on my spinnerbaits, first of all, is I will sometimes change out that blade for a bigger blade if I feel like the profile of the bait fish that they're after is a little bit bigger. And I also will put on a skirt that hangs down further, like this one on this War Eagle. See how that one hangs down and that one doesn't? What I feel like that does is you don't have to worry about you don't have to put a trailer on it, and I hardly ever use trailers. Because it can roll the spinnerbait or throw off the action of it or the weight of it or the fall descent or whatever. I just don't mess with it. I don't use a trailer hook ever, and I don't use a trailer. So that's going to be my number 2. Now, this one's a 3/8, this one's a 1/2 ounce. Typically, I'm going to throw this, first of all, in the spring, I'm going to have every one of these baits tied on, and that's it. Okay, maybe occasionally throw in there a medium diving crankbait or something like that once the water gets a little bit warmer, but these cover pretty much everything that I'm fishing. Now, what I'm going to use the spinnerbaits for are banks without grass that have wood or rock or transition areas or something like that. I'm going to throw them where they're immediately next to deep water. And what I try to do is parallel the bank and make that spinnerbait deflect off of everything. Because if that spinnerbait is just coming along, you know, normal, it doesn't really stand out as much as if it's, you know, bouncing off things, and then these blades will flare out, and then it'll keep tracking straight, and then it'll hit something and bounce and deflect, and that's when normally they'll get it, as off that reaction strike, because they don't even have to be hungry. If they see that happen in front of them, they're going to eat it. So that's my number 2. Spinnerbait I throw a lot in the early spring, and those are going to be, like I said, rocky areas, any areas that are steeper type banks that have rock or wood on them, or both. And I don't throw a spinnerbait a whole lot around grass. I know some people do, but I just don't. So that's my number 2. Like a no trailer hook, no trailer, one size bigger blade. Now this one I did change the blade so you can see the difference. I think it's a number 5. I'm not sure the exact size, but this is the blade that comes on the bait, and this is the size that I go up to. So you can see it's quite a pretty big difference, and I can feel the bait better when it's tracking that big blade. I can feel the thump of it, so I know what it's doing. If you can't feel what your spinnerbait is doing, it's really useless to you, because you don't have any idea whether it's tracking straight, the bar's bent, your blades are bent, blades are missing. You wouldn't even know because you can't feel it. So it's important to be able to feel your blades. Also, what I do if I want the bait to run lower in the water column, like if I'm having trouble touching bottom or touching rock, I'll take this bar and bend it as far in as I can. So the closer that those blades ride to that hook, the deeper and faster that you can wind this bait, okay? Now the opposite's true too. If you want more drag or you want it to move slower in the water column, bend it up. See, now you have it far from there, and then it's causing way more drag, so it takes a little bit longer. You can slow it down real slow and still keep it high in the water column. So spinnerbait's number 2. Again, in muddy water, I'm going to opt for the chartreuse and white. In clear water, I'm going to go for more of a sexy shad combo. So that's number 2. Number 3, the good old, you guys know how much I love to throw a Senko. It's the stupidest bait in the world, but it flat out catches fish. And for whatever reason, that thing is a monster in the springtime. I don't care where you're at in the country, you throw a Senko on a 1/4 ounce head and drag it slow, you're going to get bit. On my spinnerbaits, I throw 15-pound fluoro too. And then on the Senko, I'll throw 15-pound fluoro with a 1/4 ounce sinker, tungsten sinker, and I don't peg the tip. It's the only time of the year I don't peg it. The reason why I don't do that is because now if you're fishing in rock, your sinker is going to get hung up in the rock a little bit more, so you might have to peg it. If you keep getting hung up, then yeah, you would want to peg it. If you can do it without, though, it works so much better because whatever this looks like to those fish, when that sinker falls, the sinker is going to fall first when it's not pegged. And then this piece, the Senko itself, is going to actually follow the weight down. So you can see it looks like a chain reaction. It looks like a little piece of bait and then it looks like a bigger piece of bait trying to get it. They can't stand that. You know, they don't want anyone else to be eating the way that they're eating. So as soon as they see that one chasing the other, they have to eat it. I'm going to throw a Senko anywhere and any place that I can get it. The biggest key, I would say, to fishing a Senko is the weather. Spinnerbaits and traps I tend to use earlier in the morning, or if it's windier out and you have some kind of current flow, that's when I'm going to choose that over the Senko. Now, of course, if they're not eating it, then you might have to slow down and throw the Senko. But normally I use it, you know, I'll throw a moving bait until the conditions dictate it for me. If it's calm out and slick calm, I'm going to throw a Senko. If I've hit this same area 30 times throughout the week, then I'm going to go back the next time and fish it slow and see if I can pick up any that weren't willing to chase the bait. So definitely Senko is my number 3. Now, like I said, don't peg the sinker. I usually use a 1/4 ounce, so it has more of a natural fall. It's not a very heavy weight. And I'm throwing that also in shallow water, anywhere from 0 to 10 foot. The 2 colors that I go with, I'm really simple with colors. I don't go crazy. Black and blue, dirtier water. Once I get into clear water, I'll throw a color that's watermelon candy, or green pumpkin candy. It's just basically like a natural looking green that kind of looks like bluegill or whatever. There are eel in some lakes, so there's no perfect imitation of an eel than a Senko. And for whatever reason, the actual brand Senko will outcatch any other ones that I know of. So that's my number 3. Now my number 4 is, now all of these baits I'm throwing on 15-pound fluoro. It makes it a lot easier. Number 4 is a Fluke style bait. Fluke style soft bait. This one is a Yamamoto D-Shad, which tends to be one of my favorite because when a normal soft jerkbait falls, it falls kind of side to side, you know, like a dying baitfish, which is awesome. This one, however, will quiver like this, so it's something that they're normally not used to seeing, and that tail kind of kicks a little bit. So this is one of my favorites. Again, I'm going to use green pumpkin, black and blue, or white. Those are the only 3 color combos I'm going to use. With this bait, I always throw it weightless. It's going to be with a nail weight. So what I normally do is I'll take like a 3/0 or a 4/0 EWG hook, and rig it Texas rigged with no weight on the front, like I said, and then I'll take a small nail weight and I'll bury it right there in the back by the tail. Just enough to get it to sink a little bit faster. And that's typically when I know that the fish are bedding, and they're on beds and they don't want to be bothered with, and something fast moving is just irritating, and they don't want to chase nothing. They want to just keep whatever it is off their bed. Now I'm talking about the fish that spawn first, like super cold water still, in the 50s and stuff like that. So what I'll do with this is I'll basically just find the area where I was catching them pre-spawn, knowing that they're going to be somewhere similar, spawning somewhere close by, and I'll cast this out. I throw it on a casting rod. I have no problem casting it. I'll throw it out and I'll just stop it. As soon as it hits the water, I'll let it flutter all down to the bottom. It only takes a few seconds. And then I'll jerk it a couple times and then let it do the same thing. And what I'm doing is I'm hoping that I'll come onto one of their areas where they're bedding at, and they'll, just open their mouth and eat it because it's easy. So this one I'll throw it just like the Senko. Anywhere that they're bedding or they're planning on spawning, I'm going to throw that bait. So hopefully you guys have a similar feelings towards these baits, and if not, give them a try this early spring. Should be a killer around late March, all of April, and then even into mid and late May. So give it a shot. Try these techniques out, and hopefully you guys will catch more fish.